Hello, everybody. Welcome into Flyers Files, your weekly stop for all things Flyers hockey presented by BFA Sports. I'm Kevin Durso, your host, and looking forward to joining you every Wednesday going forward as we take this journey on the hockey season, the Flyers season. Now 9 games in the books, a 5-3-1 record following Tuesday's 3-2 shootout win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. So just a lot going on so far early in the season. We're going to get to as much of it as possible in a short amount of time on this first episode. Different things to cover. Goaltending, always a topic. Some positive news around the goaltending so far this season, so we'll be talking about that. Matvei Michkov, bit of a slow start for him. Couple of different theories as to why we'll discuss. Trevor Zegras, one of the new acquisitions for the Flyers, certainly the biggest name that they acquired in the offseason. A look at his impact so far and a lot more to come. So before we get into too much of the Flyers talk, I did want to just start this off with an introduction of who I am, what this show is going to be, and then we can dive right into it. So who am I? I've covered the Flyers for 12 seasons now. This is my 12th season. So since the 2014-15 season as a credentialed media member. If you've been following me from the beginning, you know me possibly from Sports Talk Philly. Over the last now 9 seasons, you know me from 97.3 ESPN as well. So whether it's through my on-air appearances, through my written work, anything like that, I appreciate you joining me here as well as we take this journey together and go through the Flyers season. So that's a little bit more about me. What is this show? So it's going to be a weekly show, weekly on Wednesdays. We'll discuss everything in Flyers hockey. It's usually going to be airing at 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. There may be some staggered times. You've seen some of the programs on here, Nernshaw Radio, sometimes staggers the times for postgame or based on the schedule. I will be doing the same. There will be Tuesday nights where I'm at the arena and we don't get a chance to be ready to go for maybe an 11 a.m. show. So it'll be a little bit later on Wednesday, or we might be moving some things around. So just bear with us. We'll give you any updates on any changes in the time, but usually 11 a.m. on Wednesdays is when you can expect it. Certainly on Wednesdays, typically throughout the season. In addition to this show, I'm also going to take the Flyers Files name and also purpose it into a column on 97.3 ESPN.com as well. So every week I'll be posting some of my observations as part of the Flyers Files column. And what's this going to be as a show? It's just going to be a place for us to talk about all things Flyers, the latest topics surrounding the team, observations from my experiences in the press box, and getting you guys involved as well, fan polls and so on. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. We'll also have features weekly throughout this as well. Things like the Flyers 3 stars of the week. We'll take a look at the schedule that is to come and much more. So let's dive right into it. And we're going to start with a fan poll question. So if you're watching, feel free to chime in wherever you are and whatever you think of this. Here's our fan poll question for the week. Who has been the most pleasant surprise so far this season? Is it Owen Tippett, Dan Vladar, Sean Couturier, or someone else? So anybody on the team you can pick for this, but those are your options that we've listed because primarily those are the 3 guys I think that have stood out so far as guys that didn't have necessarily high expectations or that may have gotten off to a better start than expected. So who's been your pleasant surprise? Let us know in the comments or on the live stream, and we'll try to get to some of those maybe later in the show. All right, so let's get into some of our discussions here. And I want to start right at the top with goaltending because it seems to be the topic that everybody wants to discuss. And usually every year we have a big discussion about how it's a problem. And Last year was no different. It's one of the worst teams in goaltending, save percentage, and it's just every year we have this conversation about save percentage, goals against, goals that should be stopped, all of the above. And in this case, so far this season, things have been trending in a lot better direction for the Flyers so far. Let's take a look at some of the numbers here. You see Dan Vladar and Sam Ersson. These two have started to feed off of one another. Vladar was really tearing it up at the beginning. You see the record 3-2-0, 1.81 goals against average, and a 932 save percentage. Those are all really positive numbers. But Ersson's come on with 2 shootout wins now. Goals against still above 3 and the save percentage still below 900, but building in the right direction. Ersson's kind of seen some limited action in his starts, so that's why the save percentage is where it is. But it's a good problem to have when you have 2 different goalies that are playing really well. And Ersson started to turn it on. Ersson kind of still has that problem of giving up one goal that you really want him to make a save on. It happened in last night's game against Pittsburgh. The first goal is one that really needs to be stopped. But one of the things that they've talked about is that it seems like this season, as compared to last season or other seasons, Ersson's allowing that goal a little earlier in the game. It might be the first goal instead of the third goal, for example. And that kind of allows Ersson to lock in and not allow a goal like that for the rest of it. It gives the team a chance to regroup and really come back from whatever it is that, that goal that shouldn't be allowed and things like that. So it's helped the Flyers stay in games a little bit more and come back and be able to win some of these games. But you're starting to see Ersson come on. I thought one of the things that was really interesting, and Rick Tocchet talked about it after last night's game, was that, in the beginning, for a couple of games, it was a rotation, an even rotation. Vladar got the opener and the third game. Ersson got the second game and the fourth game. And then Vladar got 3 starts in a row, and everybody kind of figured, well, that means he's probably gotten the starter's job, right? It's his, the performance speaks for itself so far. It is a small sample size, but he's really kind of started to pull away in that competition, and Ersson just didn't have the numbers or performance in his first 2 games. Then Ersson got the start because they needed to get him back into action, so he got the start on Saturday against the Islanders and wins the game in a shootout. So when he was announced as a starter for Tuesday, I think it was a bit of a surprise to some people because they didn't just go right back to Vladar and go right back to what seemed to be working for most of the season to this point. And Tocchet basically kind of talked about how he likes to get his goalies into a bit of a rhythm where those guys, if you have to use 2 of them and when you're trying to balance the use of 2 of them, that they get maybe 2, 3, 4 starts in a row before you go back to the other guy and give that goalie a little chunk as well as the starter. So we'll see where it goes. It's obviously not going to be something that can carry on for too long. The Flyers have a back-to-back this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, so each goalie will get a game there for sure. But it's certainly something that, as it evolves, you're trying to see who emerges, if anybody emerges as a number 1 first and foremost, and then where it goes from there. Because now it seems like the Flyers are trying to utilize both guys as 1A, 1B instead of necessarily pushing forward with a guy who is the number 1. So even though Vladar has some really outstanding numbers, and let's face it, I think that's been a surprise to people as well because he didn't have the starter experience in Calgary. He mostly played in a backup role. He takes over in a starter's job for the most part. When you're playing 5 of the first 7 games, that's pretty significant, and really just didn't miss a beat throughout. Just one strong game after the other. And, for a guy that I don't think many people had on the radar as a big offseason acquisition, it was just kind of another goalie to go in the rotation, seemed like a backup option. He's really done his job so far this season, and that's certainly substantial, and it's something to continue to watch as this goes along, because I think everybody kind of just assumed Sam Ersson's the starter, Dan Vladar's the backup. That's the way it was going to be from day one, and they very quickly flipped that order. Vladar got the opening night start, nearly won the game against the defending back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, then beat them 4 nights later when it was the Flyers' home opener. And then you think about some of the teams that Vladar has played since and getting wins against, getting a win against Minnesota, a win against Seattle, losing another close game to Ottawa. It all seems to add up that his performances have just been so good, and that really continues to make this a little bit more of a discussion to be had, because I don't again, Vladar not playing more than 25 to 30 games. I think his career high is 29 games in a season. You don't think about that guy becoming your starting goalie, especially at this stage of his career. And he has really started to turn heads, and I think that makes a huge difference for the way things look. It makes a huge difference in the results. Let's face it. The Flyers probably aren't where they are without the goaltending that Vladar has given them this season. And Ersson's done his part in the last 2 games. You get extra points by winning in shootouts, and Ersson's been very good at them over the course of his career, and that's really helped the Flyers get a couple of extra points against 2 teams within the division too. So that's certainly all positives. And now what we really want to see at this point, and what I'm interested to see, is if Ersson turns this into having numbers that compete with Vladar. Vladar's numbers are not going to be a sub-2 goals against average and a save percentage that's upwards of 925 or above. Those are elite numbers. You really have to be that version of yourself night in, night out. And so far he has been, but it's going to be really hard to do over the course of half a season or more if that's how many starts he gets. So if you can balance it out where both guys are in a good, comfortable range, probably around 2.5 goals against per game, save percentages above 900, maybe closer to 910, and well above that league average mark, that's going to be the thing that really makes it stand out, and that really kind of solidifies that as a position of strength and not a position of weakness. So those are all things that you look for as we move forward with that goaltending position. There's still a lot of time for things to change with that, certainly. And you don't really have much room for error with that position because you traded Ivan Fedotov before the season started. You've got 2 young kids in the minors that really need the time there to kind of marinate and continue to develop. And once they become ready down the road, then certainly if something were to happen, then you're prepared for it. And I get that Alexei Kolosov has NHL experience from last season. He really needs the time in the minors, though, to become the goalie that everyone thinks he can be. And while he's getting that, if these 2 guys can carry the load at the NHL level, it's going to make a world of difference for where your team is. We've seen it so far with the success level. You don't win 5 out of your first 9 games and have them be close contests and some of them low-scoring contests without your goaltending being really good, and they've gotten it so far. That takes us to really one of our first player spotlights of this week, and it's Matvei Michkov, who, we know at this point that Michkov is going to be a player that has all eyes on him at all moments. That's what happens when you're the future of a franchise and when you kind of emerge very early on in your career as the face of a franchise. But he has so much potential, and you saw it in a year where they didn't have a lot of offensive production, didn't have a lot of success in terms of win-loss record. But Michkov comes away with 26 goals to lead the team as a rookie and breaks 60 points despite the usage by John Tortorella and the sometimes the shackles that were on him from being creative offensively. He really has a lot more free reign now. He did at the end of last season where he really bolstered the numbers to end the season. And then similarly, under Rick Tocchet, he's going to have some freedom to do what he wants to and to be able to create offensively. We just haven't seen it as much yet. The first few games were really rough, and there was a lot of stories going around. There was rumors that he came into camp out of shape. There was the discussion of an ankle injury that popped up over the summer. Whatever the case may be, he didn't look as fast as he usually does. He didn't look like he was just all there completely, that he couldn't put it all together physically the way that he wanted to. It was noticeable. And it still is noticeable to a degree because you're seeing a guy who's not putting up the numbers that I think people would expect. You kind of thought that year 2, he might come in and really start to take that next step and really do it with some conviction. And he's only got 3 points through 9 games. And you see other guys that are contributing and really making that impact early in the season that have a lot more points than he does, that you wouldn't have put on your radar to have as many points as Michkov does. So he's certainly a focal point of this thing, and you have to be careful about that because you don't want to necessarily read too much into a slow start. Sometimes it just happens to even the best players in the league. But Michkov, as we continue to look at those numbers and see what he's done so far, he's just a player who there's so much attached to him. The skill level is so high. The production level can be so high for him that you expect it every game. And he isn't there yet in terms of that. He's had a lot more scoring chances over the last 2, 3, 4 games at this point that really start to show him turning a corner. I think really from around the time that they played Seattle, that now you're starting to see it continue to build. He looks a lot closer to getting to where he wants to be as a player. And that can only help moving forward. That if you're the Flyers and if you're that, that team that needs to take that next step and needs to do it with guys you draft, we're going to get a little later in the show into a line that is all draft picks, all developed, all homegrown talent that is really taking a big step and has really emerged as kind of the top line just based on consistency more than anything. But that's where you want guys like Michkov to get to. And I know it's hard to watch him have those games where it just doesn't look like he's himself. It's tough. You expect that player to deliver on a nightly basis, and you see it from other guys. You think about, Michkov goes up in his draft year, he's with Connor Bedard. Bedard is doing it on a nightly basis. And when he's a rookie in the league and he's up for the possibility of being up for the Calder, and Macklin Celebrini's also in the running, or Lane Hutson's in the running, and those guys are continuing to do it on a night in, night out basis. That's what you want from your star players, and Michkov demands a lot of himself as well. You saw a little bit of it, I think in last night's game, he gets a chance where he gets behind the defense and it stopped, and he looks like he's ready to smack his stick against the boards because you can see it. He wants to score. And, maybe that's the benefit of the shootout for the last couple of games is he's found a way to score in the shootout. You hope that can unlock something for him. It hasn't quite been there just yet, but you're getting to the point where it's less about him not necessarily being in the best shape or having to try to catch up to guys from a conditioning standpoint to he's there. It's just not going just yet for him. And eventually it will, though. And when it does, that could really turn a corner on the Flyers season. It could just be something that is so beneficial for the Flyers to be able to have that guy back, to have Michkov have some swagger back too, because when he's going, he's got a swagger to his game, and that's what you want to see. It's just not completely there yet. And despite that, though, that's the benefit and the good side of this is that despite him not playing at his best, the team is winning games. The team is finding a way to have success from other players. And so when Michkov does eventually catch up and the production starts to meet what we're seeing with the eye test from some scoring chances and really starts to put the slow start and whatever conditioning may have been an issue in the rearview mirror, that's where I think people are going to get really excited because there's already things you're seeing. As much as you might be concerned about Michkov's start, and I get it, 9 games in, you think that this player should be close to that point per game level. That's just what you expect from Michkov, especially with all the things you've heard about him so far and what you saw in his rookie year for that matter. It's just not there yet, and yet there's other guys who are able to fill the gaps in. There's guys who are helping the team win when Michkov isn't the guy who's scoring all the goals or helping to be the key component of the offense. So you take those things for what they're worth. It's certainly a situation where you want to see if those two guys, if he can get going and start to meet the level of the other guys that he's playing with. So that's where I want to shift gears to, because there's another guy on his line currently. And this was a switch. Michkov was playing on the top line originally with Sean Couturier and Travis Konecny, and it just really wasn't there. And Flyers were looking for a game where they had a shot to win, at a game where they had a shot to win, and they moved Owen Tippett up because he was the guy who seemed like he had his best skating legs, and it resulted in a win. And they haven't changed the line since. So now Michkov is with Christian Dvorak and Trevor Zegras, and that's where I want to transition to, because Zegras has been another player who is going to have some attention. When you get traded to a team and you're the new shiny toy that everybody gets to experience potentially for the first time, and let's face it, in Zegras' case, more than other guys, you're not just the shiny new toy. You're the shiny new toy that comes with a commercial that has a lot to showcase. That you're not just the average new toy to the toy box here. You're something that's really special and has special skills that can make a huge difference. So when you come with a kind of that as advertised creativity and skill set, you want to see it. And no, he hasn't pulled off the Michigan yet or anything like that. And let's not get ahead of ourselves with where he can take that creativity. Zegras is giving you point production that you can work with. And it's an important year for Zegras. It's a contract year, and you need to be sure, he needs to put his best foot forward every single night. You don't want to make a contract offer to him without knowing for sure that it's a fit, that you see the long-term future there. It's hard not to see the long-term future when you've got a guy like Zegras who's 24 and kind of just looking for a fresh start. You can see it when he's out there. He's having a lot of fun. His personality is great. He fits right in with everybody else, it seems. And again, when you have all of those, all the off-ice stuff can be great. When you are producing and when you are performing, that's when it makes the biggest difference. That's when you see the impact come through. And yeah, Zegras is a big pass-first guy, big setup guy, lots of assists. Did have a big game over the weekend where he scored his first couple of goals. And then you get into the shootout, and you know how good he is at shootouts. You've seen the numbers that he's one of the top shootout guys in the league at this point, arguably the best in the league based on percentage. And he scores in his first one. And then in the second one, he wants to be out there for it, and he can't because he takes a misconduct penalty at the end of overtime. He's not eligible to shoot, and the Flyers still won the shootout anyway. But when you have that player in your back pocket for shootouts, for overtime, for all of the things that you can exercise skill with, you're seeing it on the power play. The power play is practically running through Zegras at this point, and that's what makes him such a dangerous player. That he's got the ability to score some goals, he's got the ability to set up teammates, he's got the creativity, and when he can start producing at the level that you're seeing, 9 points in 9 games, to be a point per game player when you've come from a new, to a new destination, trying to figure out a way that you fit in, all of the above with this, he really has stepped up so far that it's making it become, I don't want to jump the gun on this. It's going to become an easy decision if he keeps playing like this, that you want him around long term. And that's why you do what Danny Briere did over the offseason, and you take the chance on this guy. You try to get players of his talent level, of his ability, and see what they can bring to your team as you go through a rebuild. This is a piece that they don't have as much of. That's why we put the eyes on Michkov so much. Look at the skill set. Look at what he can do. Look at the creativity. He's going to try things that nobody else seems like they would. And Zegras is a guy who will try things that nobody else will. That's the benefit of having a guy with a skill set. And if you can get him confident by having him produce and being successful, it's only going to take that to another level. So I look at guys like that, and it gets really exciting. It certainly adds to the equation of what those guys can do, and what guys can do around him. You see how he affects a power play. People have to pay attention to Zegras on a power play. There's no way around it. So you take your most effective line and you put a quality defenseman who you want trying to run your power play, and you start to see how it builds the results. You see that Cam York can be more effective on a power play when Zegras is out there. You see the trio of Tyson Forster, Noah Cates, Bobby Brink, and they're having success. They're getting power play goals because of what Zegras is able to do to kind of start things off. You see how everybody else kind of responds to it. He's really a great fourth forward for that line that works so well together, because that's a lunch pail kind of line. They go to work. They try really hard to maintain possession and win puck battles. And then Zegras brings that skill to a power play unit where you do need to win battles, but you're going to have a team that may play conservative, that may sit back because they need to protect the front of the net. You don't want to get too aggressive on the penalty kill, so it allows Zegras to gain some space and be able to do something that he's really good at and handle the puck and maintain play and maintain possession and try to set guys up. He wants to look to set guys up, and then in turn, if somebody else can set him up in the process, it's going to go a long way. So those are things to keep in mind and to consider as you watch Zegras on the power play. It started slow. It wasn't going the way that you hoped it would with some new life injected into it, but now you're seeing the power play start to score a few more times in short order here and have some recent success, and that's going to be another key to being successful. We know that they're penalty killing. They've got guys who are good penalty killers, can be up there. If they can get the power play up there too, and and with the help of Zegras remaining as impressive as he has been, if those two things can kind of come together and really boost the power play percentage and the rankings, that will really go a long way to establishing what the Flyers can be and maybe seeing how far they can take this thing. So far, so good with the way they've been able to gain some points. Getting points in 6 out of the first 9 games is very good. Winning 5 of them, not only winning 5, but now being able to have 4 wins in your last 5 games over the course of this. Very positive things going forward. And now you wait to see kind of where it takes you from there. And as you go through this season, they've played some tough teams. They've played some teams that are banged up. They've played some teams that just maybe aren't going well at the right time, at the time that they come into Philadelphia. They've had a lot of home games. That can help. So they're doing what they need to. They're getting wins early in the season to kind of establish that they might be hanging around a little bit. Rick Tockett's talked about how it seems like they're going to be in a competitive game every night, and the final results show that. It's a 1-goal loss to Florida to open the season, an overtime loss to Carolina that you think you have won, and then a call goes against you and you give up the game winner the other way, but you still get a point out of it. You're still in a competitive game. They won on the homestand against Florida and then Minnesota and Seattle, the first homestand. The one loss they had to Winnipeg, even lopsided on the scoreboard at 5-2, but they held Winnipeg to 15 shots. So they really actually defensively kind of did their job. It was just seemed like every bounce went into the net. And then you go on the road and you lose a 1-goal game to Ottawa. And then you win in a shootout against the Islanders, and you win in a shootout against the Penguins. And you start to see how what Rick Tocchet was telling you, it's kind of right. It seems like they're going to play a lot of close games throughout the course of the season, and just have to be prepared for those situations where you're going to need goaltending. You're going to need your skill guys to step up. You're going to need your top defenders to play well in their own zone and try to turn it into offense the other way. All of those types of things. And if they can figure out how to create an identity of being able to win those close games early in the season, it's only going to help later in the season as things start to open up. So next I wanted to shift gears to a line in particular we've been talking a lot about, and that's the Noah Cates line with Tyson Forrester and Bobby Brink. And collectively, the trio has been very successful. As we watch the course of the games going forward, I might do something a little more in depth on them next week, on next week's show. But I really wanted to focus in on Cates in particular because he's been a player that gets tasked with some pretty strong defensive assignments. He goes up against the top line on the other side pretty much on a nightly basis at this point. And so after, at this point, when you're talking about some of the guys, even when Florida's down a top center like Alexander Barkov, Sam Bennett's the next guy in line, you certainly still have a test with him. Mark Scheifele's the top center on Winnipeg. On Minnesota, it might not be necessarily the guy who's playing down the middle, but you've got Kirill Kaprizov to worry about when you're out there. When you're playing Pittsburgh, it's you're lining up with, across from Sidney Crosby. When, you're playing the Islanders, it might be Matthew Barzal, who's the guy who you're lining up against and who's a tough matchup for you. And Cates just keeps being able to handle that more and more. After last night's game, I asked Cates about having those matchups, what it means to have those situations and to be assigned such responsibility. He's still a relatively young player, still kind of growing. And that's what I talked about with the homegrown line. To have a guy like Cates, who was certainly not a high draft pick, not a guy with a lot of expectations who's emerged like that. You put him out there with guys who do get expectations. Tyson Forrester was a first-round pick. Bobby Brink was an early second-round pick. You throw those two with a guy who was a fifth-round pick who now has it all figured out, it seems like. He knows who he is as a player. He continues to be very successful, to win battles, to defend really well, to make the right plays. And then on top of it, he was one of your restricted free agents last offseason, and you took care of that contract, and he's locked up for 4 years at a very affordable $4 million. So everything about Noah Cates' future seems like it's aligned. Like, what kind of player he is. You know what to expect from him. You know where you can put him. You've got him locked up. And so I asked Cates about what it means to get to defend and to have to defend and be responsible for that, to keeping those guys off the board, the top players on the opposition. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, it's great. It's a huge honor. You just got to be ready. You got to be focused every night, every shift. So it's I've kind of came into the league and have done it, so it's kind of all I know. But it's obviously an honor and a privilege, and it's got to work with my line mates, and just got to be focused every shift. These guys are so good, so dangerous, and you can't take a shift off. You always got to be working out there and doing the little things.
So that's Noah Cates talking about playing against some of the top guys in the opposition, and he just continues to do it well. He's probably the most complete all-around player the team has right now. You see shades of what Sean Couturier was in his prime, and Couturier's had a really good start to the season, obviously. Like, he's been really good himself, but you see shades of that in Noah Cates' game. The attention to detail, the ability to kind of just be a do-it-all player. Plays in all situations. Now you can use one like, he has graduated from being the work in progress, third liner kind of player to being the guy you can put out there on a penalty kill, the guy you can put out there on a power play unit now, the guy that you can put out there in overtime that can win you a game because he's got some offensive chops as well. So it's all of the above with him, that you can use him in all situations. And so in addition to talking to Cates about those situations and where his game's at and everything like that, I also asked Rick Tocchet about what he's seen from Cates as well so far. Here's what Rick Tocchet had to say after last night's game.
Yeah, I mean, he's been one guy that from day one has just been he just keeps on chugging along. Like I said, I'm getting heavy minutes against the top. You're talking top players, Scheifele and Crosby and all these guys they're top, and he's holding his own, and then they're scoring too. So that's a big thing. So yeah, doing a really good job.
So you just get the sense that that's a line and a player in particular, but you hear Tocchet refer to the line because it just keeps like everything keeps going beyond Cates at this point. Cates may be the centerpiece of that and really be the guy that you focus on, and the guy who's kind of tasked with, most of the top players on the other side are centers. So you kind of get attached to he's on the center usually, whether it's going up against that player in faceoffs or just being able to defend that player and that offensive skill set. You look at a game like last night's, and Sidney Crosby doesn't get much of anything until he finds a way to kind of get a lucky goal that takes a fortunate bounce at the right time in the third period. And so for 2.5 periods, though, you hold him down and you take care of what you need to do. And I even think about, Cates thinks he draws a penalty in overtime that doesn't get called, and then on the penalty kill makes another play and draws another penalty. And that's the kind of thing that coaches notice, those types of things. Players certainly respond to that type of work ethic. And like, you just get the sense, like, they all feed off of each other. Why is Bobby Brink scoring a goal on a power play and then coming through in the shootout and kind of trying to fulfill his part of this responsibility for helping the team win? Well, Noah Cates played a really good game alongside of him, and Tyson Forster's right in the mix as well. Like, it's really funny to watch that so far. Even that trio, when it comes to overtime, and they don't get to play collectively, obviously. You don't usually put three forwards out there in a 3-on-3 overtime. They all think they've scored an overtime goal in some capacity. Bobby Brink had one called back in Carolina that the Flyers eventually lose the game. Cates does score one that counts. Forster scored in overtime and thought he had a goal, and it was overturned for an offside call. Those guys play really well together, and it gives you something to build upon, that you don't have to stay so, sometimes coaches tend to get involved very quickly when something's not working, and they mix and match lines and they want to try something different. And you've seen how it can work on occasion. You see what, Owen Tippett was going a few games ago, and you elevate him to play alongside Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny, and now that line seems to be clicking a little bit. You see that Zegras, Dvorak, and Michkov are starting to find some chemistry. It all starts to add up, but that's the one line that's been constant for well beyond the 9 games this season. It goes back to last season and well into last season to find where that combination really came together, and really where that group has turned a corner again. These are all homegrown players that you've had to watch grow and develop and overcome adversity and overcome questions of whether or not they may even be a fit or anything like that. And that is, it's so important to have that kind of chemistry with your lines, to have that kind of ability to be able to utilize a line that you can trust and just know that everybody's going to know exactly what they're supposed to do, know exactly where they're supposed to go. There's no thought process behind it. There really isn't anything that you have to think of when it comes to that. So that's encouraging, and it's a group that I would keep a close eye on for the rest of the year, because they have that it factor when they're on the ice, that everybody knows where they're supposed to be, everybody knows where they're going, and then they contribute. And Forster's got that offensive knack to his game. He's got the ability to drive play and then produce as a result. Cates is finding it more and more, and Brink is now finding another level maybe with his offensive game. So all of the above with those guys, that if you can get those three to continue to do what they're doing, it's going to spell success for the Flyers going forward for sure. Let's get into one of our weekly segments. Let's get into the 3 stars of the week. And we'll start with star number 3, Noah Cates. Kind of a late entry for me. It's not really there necessarily with the point totals, 3 goals, 6 points. It's solid numbers for 9 games. He's not necessarily the leading point guy, but he's been so good with the defensive responsibilities and how he's handled it. And it just seems like every night that I'm watching him, I see some impressive play that he makes. So that makes Cates my 3rd star of the week. My 2nd star of the week, Trevor Zegras, point per game player so far, obviously had a huge impact in Saturday's win against the Islanders, 2 goals and an assist in that one, and then a goal in the shootout. He's been impressive so far, and he seems like he's finding his way more and more. It wasn't really completely there in the first couple of games. The Flyers didn't score as much early on. And now that as they start to score more, at least as some of the scoring has gone through the power play or has gone through the combination of whether Zegras is out there with the Cates line on a power play or working with his line mates, with Christian Dvorak and Matvei Michkov. Something's working with that right now, that Zegras is kind of on one of those hot streaks right now where it seems like every night you're going to find his name in the box score somewhere. But that takes us to my 1st star of the week. And again, these are kind of collective numbers. Vladar hasn't played as much over the last week, but the start to his season was just so impressive, and the numbers speak for themselves, that 181 goals against and 932 save percentage. So he's been such a success story for the Flyers and really been the key behind some of those early wins, especially, until those 2 shootout wins that Ersson plays a big part. And obviously the Flyers don't have a win on the board without the play of Dan Vladar. And that's what is going to make him my 1st star for the week to start this thing off. So with that, let's start to turn our attention to the next week ahead, and let's look ahead to the schedule that's coming up. So Flyers back on the ice on Thursday night. They'll take on the Nashville Predators to continue the homestand. They also have back-to-back games over the weekend, Saturday night against the Toronto Maple Leafs, Sunday night against the Calgary Flames, and then the team heads on the road to take on the Montreal Canadiens on Tuesday, and that's where things will take you before we're back with you for our next episode. So the Flyers with some interesting competition there. Some teams that are hovering right around the middle. Nashville's kind of below that marker, maybe just a little bit. Toronto's kind of stuck in the middle to start this season. Calgary really struggling to start the season. Only 2 wins for them so far, so they're not off to the best start. And then you're going to get a real test with Montreal because they just seem to keep winning. Kind of a little bit like Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh, I don't think has the expectations that Montreal did. Montreal made the playoffs last year. You look at their young core, they're a team that seems ready to make the jump that they're kind of making now. So it's not a surprise to see them have some success, but they're right there at the top of the Atlantic Division, and that says a lot about where their season has started. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. But before then, the ability for the Flyers to continue to do some home cooking as well. I mean, they've been off to a really good start at home in particular. Obviously, at this point, all of their wins have come on home ice, but you've played 6 games on home ice, you win 5 of them. That's pretty substantial, and it really kind of says a lot about everything that you're doing so far and the things that are working for you. So that's where things are for the Flyers at this point, as they get this season started. Certainly a strong start, certainly a lot of fun, an entertaining team to watch. It seems like that they've just got some of that youth injected in that really helps to keep things lively, and some of the new faces coming through as well. When you see Zegras having success, Vladar having success, Christian Dvorak's played pretty well so far, all things considered as well. He doesn't have one of the biggest roles on the team, but he's played well. Even a guy, Nikita Grabenkin is somebody who most people probably don't remember how the Flyers got him in the first place. He was part of the Scott Lawton deal at the trade deadline last year. He has a good enough camp that he makes the team. You see him do something like jump in to come to the defense of a teammate, and then he's firing up the crowd after he drops the gloves. That'll endear you to the fans very quickly, and that's a great way to kind of get your career started in Philadelphia as well. So lots of things to be excited about, and we'll see the carryover as the Flyers take on teams, a couple of teams in the Western Conference over the course of this homestand, Nashville and Calgary. They also get Toronto, and then get some more consistent road play. So far, it hasn't really been much. They had a couple of games on the road to start things off, and then just one that split this stretch of 9 out of 10 at home. That's going to just about do it for this episode of Flyers Files. Our next episode will be next week. You can catch it at 11 a.m. on Wednesday. Like I said, most weeks it will be Wednesday at 11 that you'll be able to see everything going on and watch the show and get all the insight on Flyers hockey, all the latest updates, all the observations we have over the previous week. A lot more to come with this show, so be sure to stay with us. And don't forget about the other shows that have debuted over the course of the last several weeks. The Trust the Mics podcast that involves discussing Sixers basketball. You've got the Now Batting for the Phillies podcast that is on the Phillies as well. More to come. Nernshaw Radio is part of this, so lots of things to come. Excited to be a part of it and to watch along with you and cover this with you as we see where this season goes for the Philadelphia Flyers. But this has been the first episode of the Flyers Files podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next week.